This is Alexia Tsotsis from TechCrunch, and I am here with SoftTech VC founder Jeff Clavier, and we're talking Groupon IPO.
We are.
SoftTech actually sold a portfolio company to Groupon, GoodRec,
which launched at TechCrunch 50 about 3.5 years ago. Yep.
And I'm assuming this is
2.5 years ago. Yeah, 2.5 years ago.
I'm assuming this is partial equity or all equity?
All equity.
All equity. And so you're a shareholder in Groupon in some sense?
We ended up with Groupon shares, yes.
So we're taping before the Groupon IPO because
and so we don't know how they priced.
What are you thinking it should be priced, regardless of what it is actually priced?
So the range they gave is 16 to 18. What we heard is that there was a lot of demand around the stock, even at 18, which was considered being very high by a lot of people, a lot of analysts. My sense is they will price around 20, which would give them 12.5 billion valuation, which is enough to demonstrate that there was a lot of demand, but they kind of need that warm reception in the public market because they have all this baggage and all this sort of bad history of press and analysts really sort of hating the company. And so they need to have a really good performance on the first day to demonstrate that, hey, it was a good IPO and people were actually interested and willing and buying this stock.
Earlier you mentioned that it was one of the most hated companies ever. One of the most hated companies in America, I guess.
Well, I'm not sure whether it's one of the most hated companies in America, but certainly if you look at the internet darlings that we heard of, for some reason or a number of reasons, Groupon became that sort of thing that you shouldn't touch, that Ponzi scheme, that scam, that I think has been really overblown. Even though a lot of the communication mistakes they made sort of certainly didn't help. I do think that in the long run, it's an interesting, viable long-term business, but they have a lot to prove essentially as a public company that has grown from zero to IPO in 3 years, which we haven't seen in a long time, with real revenue and a real business. But there is so much angst and anger around the company, around the stock, that they will have to do even better to prove to everyone that they're worthy of being a public company.
What do you think about the founders, Andrew and Eric, I think, taking that much money off the table in one of their funding rounds?
I think that's one of the main things that has bugged people the most, where it's today, welcome to see founders take some money off the table. And when we talk about some money, it's typically 10, 20, $30 million, which is already a lot of money. In this case, we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars, and it's been perceived as just way overboard and almost suspicious, because when you take so much money off the table, it means that there's something wrong, that you're trying to really take the cash before the whole thing crumbles. And I've never been part of those discussions, but it's really left a lot of sort of bad taste in the mouth of many people, I think.
Yeah, you're still bullish on Groupon.
In the long run, I think that what they've built in 3 years is sort of amazing, and I might be the only one saying that, but if you look at the revenue that they're building, yes, they have a bunch of challenges: international expansion, China not working, sustainability of the business model, the fact that there is a lot of deal fatigue around what they do, but still, the footprint they've built is nothing short of amazing, and the fact that besides Groupon and Living Social, the rest of the market is disappearing, prove that they have something which is different. And even mighty Facebook sort of retreated of the daily deal sort of business, and they have even more users than Groupon.
So you don't think the fall of Groupon clones like Buy With Me is a sign that the entire market is rotting? Or
I think that the challenge for the people who are not Groupon and Living Social, which have reached scale, which have hundreds of millions of or over 100 million subscribers, and have sales in the hundreds of millions or billions of dollars, I think that the long tail of that market is really, really challenging. Unless you can find a sweet spot, some kind of a vertical where you can very profitably grow, I think the daily deal market is very challenging to scale into, and user acquisition is extremely expensive now. So that will be sort of the barrier to entry for new entrants.
So the IPO was devalued, right? It went from 25 billion to 12.
I'm not sure whether the initial pricing of 20 to 25 to 30 was ever realistic. I don't know, because we're tiny shareholders. We don't know anything about what those guys are thinking. The only sort of data points that we have are, Google offered 6 billion for the company. It sounds as though they're going to go out and trade around 12 billion. They only selling 5% of the company, so very, very small float. And so for the next 6 months, we'll see where they stabilize. But I would expect something between 12, 15, or 12, 18, or something like that, because there's quite a few people who seem to be willing to bet on Groupon, and there isn't that many stocks to buy out there. The big question is what happens after lockup. Very same question about LinkedIn, which is getting out of lockup on November 21st. And at that time, we'll see how the stock, which has been, moving up and down, but stabilizing around 8 billion of an 8 billion valuation, we'll see what those guys do.
So the IPO market seems to be tightening.
Yeah.
Do you think the going public of large companies like Groupon and Zynga will open up the market, like force people to, or not force, but make people say, hey, that's a possibility? Or do you think it'll close it entirely?
It's a great question, and I don't think we know about that, because Zynga and Groupon are sort of bellwethers. They can go out in even this very challenging, super volatile market. As to whether the other companies which are in registration, and there's certainly a ton of them, can actually have the same outcome, it's not clear.